Can we talk about how every generation is weirdly obsessed with proving they had the roughest start in life? Like, seriously, this conversation never dies. You bring up rent one time, just one time, and somebody instantly pops out of nowhere like, please. You kids have no idea, back then we had real problems. And then the younger side fires back with, yeah, cool, show me a one bedroom that doesn't look like a punishment. And that's the whole thing. Everybody's mad, everybody feels dismissed, and nobody actually wants a calm conversation. They want backup. They want somebody to go, nah, you're right. Your struggle is the real struggle. I was reading this piece comparing what different generations had to pay for the big life stuff. And honestly, the answer is way messier than people want. Because, yeah, on paper, people today do have more buying power than young adults had in the early 70s. That part is real. Income rose faster than inflation over that stretch. So if you zoom way out and squint at the chart, it kind of looks like things improved. And the second you hear that, your brain does that little record scratch thing. Like, wait, if the numbers say people can buy more now, why does everybody feel like they're getting folded by basic adulthood? That's where the conversation gets real. Because the stuff that helps you actually build a life didn't exactly chill out. Housing got wildly more expensive. Rent climbed. College took that nice little walk into full scam-looking territory. So now you've got this super weird situation where the broad math looks better, but the parts that hit your chest every month feel brutal. And that is why these arguments get so heated. Nobody lives inside overall purchasing power. People live inside due dates. They live inside monthly payments that show up with zero shame. They live inside apartment searches that somehow feel disrespectful. They live inside grocery totals that make you stare at the receipt like it personally betrayed you. So when younger people say life feels harder, a lot of the time they're not saying every single category is worse. They're saying the path they were told was normal now feels stupidly expensive. That's a different point. Because think about the dream. People are still being sold. You get a decent job, you move out, you maybe study, you maybe save for a place of your own, you start building something stable. That's supposed to sound basic. That's not some celebrity fantasy. That's regular life. But when regular life starts costing deluxe prices, people are gonna feel irritated, obviously. Nobody's asking for a beach house and a movie montage. People just want the normal version of adulthood to stop acting like an exclusive members-only club. And housing is the place where this whole conversation starts punching people in the throat. That's the one that makes everything feel different. People love bringing up mortgage rates from the past. And sure, some of those years were rough too. Nobody's saying older generations were floating through life on a cloud made of cheap perfection. But if the actual price of the house has gone completely feral, then that changes the whole picture. That's what gets lost in these debates. You can't just go, well, rates were bad back then too, and act like that settles it. If the entry point is way higher now, the challenge doesn't feel the same. It's like saying parking used to be annoying too, while ignoring that now the car costs a spaceship. And then renting, which is supposed to be the less scary option, comes in and starts acting like a villain too, because the classic idea used to be, all right, maybe buying takes time, so rent for a while, stay patient, stack some savings, and make your move later. Stack what exactly? If a giant piece of your paycheck disappears just so you can exist indoors, The whole save patiently thing starts sounding like a joke somebody told with a straight face. So a lot of people are stuck in this weird limbo. They're doing what they can, they're showing up, they're trying to be responsible, and still nothing feels like it's moving. That feeling messes with you after a while. Because being pinned in place financially doesn't stay in the money lane. It spills into everything. It changes when people leave home. It changes whether they feel comfortable dating seriously. It changes whether they can even imagine kids without laughing in a slightly stressed way. It changes the kind of work they take, the risks they avoid, the dreams they postpone. So this isn't just about dollars. It's about timing. It's about freedom. It's about whether life feels open or narrow. And then college comes in and makes the whole thing even weirder. For years, the message was super simple. Study hard, get the degree, invest in your future. That was framed like the smart move, the safe move, the grown-up move. Then a lot of people followed that advice and came out holding debt before they even got a proper shot at stability. That's a nasty combo. You're trying to start adult life while carrying this giant invisible weight, and everybody still expects you to act relaxed, ambitious, and financially disciplined at the same time. Like, sure, easy, love that. And yeah, somebody always jumps in around here with, well, college isn't the only path. Fine, true. But that doesn't erase the bigger point. The route people were told to trust got so expensive that even doing the right thing can leave you feeling behind before you've even warmed up. That's why a lot of younger adults sound less spoiled than exhausted. They're not saying, I deserve luxury for existing. They're saying, well, yo, why does the starter pack cost this much? Fair question. The article had this funny little twist in it too. Gas adjusted over time actually ended up being one of the few areas where younger adults kind of caught a break compared with people in the 70s, which is hilarious in a dark way, because it's like, wow, amazing, thank you, universe. Maybe the house is impossible and the degree is expensive enough to make your eye twitch, but hey, at least the tank doesn't ruin your whole week the way it once did. Massive win, apparently. That little detail actually says a lot, though. Every era has its own nonsense. That's why I don't really buy those super confident takes where somebody tries to flatten history into one smug sentence. You know the ones. Back then, people were tougher. Or, nobody had it as bad as young adults now. Those lines always sound bold, complete, and satisfying for about 5 seconds. And then real life walks in and ruins the performance, because real life is more awkward than that. Some things really were worse before. Some things are clearly uglier now. The pressure didn't disappear, it just moved around and changed shape. And that's probably why people get so emotional about this topic, because deep down, they're not only talking about money, they're talking about dignity. They're talking about whether effort still feels connected to progress. That's the nerve. If you work hard and still feel like the basics are drifting away from you, it does something to your head. It makes you question the script. It makes you side-eye every piece of advice that sounds neat and motivational. It makes you a little less patient when somebody tells you to stop complaining. Because from your point of view, you're not being dramatic. You're reacting to the cost of a normal life feeling weirdly inflated. And to be fair, older generations are not totally making things up either. A lot of them dealt with job insecurity, inflation shocks, energy crises, rough rates, all kinds of stuff that younger people now mention, like it was some easy golden age with cheap toast and perfect certainty. That wasn't real either. So when older people say it wasn't simple, I believe them. When younger people say this setup feels cooked, I believe them too. Both can be true without the whole thing turning into a generational cage match. That's kind of where I land on this. I don't think the lesson is that one side needs to shut up and admit the other side won history's suffering contest. That's such a useless goal. I think the better takeaway is that a society can improve in broad technical ways and still leave people feeling squeezed if the life-defining stuff gets harder to reach. But that's the real punchline. You can point at stronger buying power all day long, but if homes, rent, and education keep putting people in headlocks, they are not gonna walk around feeling prosperous. They're gonna feel trapped. Even if some spreadsheet somewhere says things are better in the abstract, and people don't live in the abstract. They live in bedrooms that are too expensive. They live in inboxes full of payment reminders. They live in tiny decisions like whether to replace something broken now or just deal with it for another month. They live in that quiet stress where one surprise expense can wreck the whole vibe of the week. That's why these conversations always feel more personal than they sound. Nobody's really arguing about charts. They're arguing about what it feels like to start from scratch. Was there room to breathe? Did effort actually move the needle? Could you imagine building something solid without feeling like you needed perfect timing, perfect luck, and maybe divine intervention? That's the emotional part underneath all the stats. And once you see that, the whole debate gets a lot less annoying, because then it stops being who had it worse, and it becomes what made life feel possible and what keeps making it feel out of reach. That's a way better question. It actually gets somewhere, because if housing keeps drifting away from ordinary incomes, that matters. If school keeps costing enough to haunt people for years, that matters. If the gap between doing what you were told and actually feeling stable keeps getting wider, people are obviously going to get cynical. And I don't even think that cynicism is always a character flaw. Sometimes it's just what happens when reality keeps not matching the sales pitch. You're told to be patient, but patience is expensive. You're told to be disciplined, but the bills don't care. You're told to think long term, but short-term survival keeps stealing the microphone. That wears people down. So no, I'm not super interested in the lazy version of this conversation anymore. Not the kids are soft version. Not the old people had it easy version. Not the this generation is doomed forever version either. All of that feels cheap. What feels more honest is saying, yeah, the picture is mixed. Yeah, the frustration is real. Yeah, a lot of people are reacting to genuine pressure, not just whining for sport. And maybe the reason these debates keep blowing up is because everybody is trying to protect their own story. Older people don't want their struggle erased. Younger people don't want their pressure laughed at. That makes sense. Nobody wants to hear that the thing they survived was fake. Nobody wants to hear that the thing crushing them is just bad attitude. So maybe the most normal response here is a little humility. Maybe it's admitting that some parts of life really did get easier, while other parts became way more hostile. Maybe it's accepting that people can have more spending power in theory and still feel like the basics are slipping away in practice. Maybe it's realizing that the economy and my actual life do not always feel like the same conversation. Because, man, when those two drift apart, that's when everybody starts sounding angry all the time. Anyway, yeah. That's why I think this topic keeps landing so hard. It's not only about history. It's not only about numbers. It's about whether a normal future still feels reachable. And if a lot of people sound tense when they talk about that, I get it. They're not necessarily asking for some fantasy. They're asking for the ordinary version of life to stop feeling like a stretch. That's not ridiculous. That's human. All right. That's it for this one. And next time somebody starts doing that whole "my generation had it worse" routine, maybe the honest answer is just maybe you both got hit, just in different ways, and the full picture is a lot less clean than the internet likes to pretend.